Welcome to the CatholicPsych Show. Today we'll be talking about labels on social media, aliens among us at Harvard University, and potentially we will get to some thoughts on President Joe Biden's recent immigration policy changes, executive action, and maybe even talking about nuclear weapon spending, and maybe even talking about guessing the meaning of slang or returning to our social convention discussion, which not very likely. Dr. Greg, how are you?
Oh man, still battling this chest cold. See, I was thinking we need to get some intro music. I think that's
Yes.
the next step of our evolution here for the Catholic Psych Show. We gotta get some like really great hype music because
Should I break out my banjo? Just
no
start
no
picking? What do you mean? Get hyped up with the banjo?
maybe we'll find some good hype banjo hype music.
All right. As long as if it's clear that I'm being tasked with coming up with some kind of intro with music and graphics, then it's coming.
I'm not saying I'm tasking you with the job. I'm just saying we need it.
I
We
want to
need.
do it.
Okay, we'll work on it. Maybe we'll do it together.
Oh man, you're limiting my creative freedom. All right. Well, listen, if you're going to limit my creative freedom there, before we get into any other story, I'm taking a victory lap first.
Congratulations. Do the victory lap.
The Boston Celtics are the NBA champions. Now, if you like sports at all, we would be talking about sports a lot here, but you don't. And I said, this is not a Catholic psych. How can I make this a Catholic Psych Show topic? Because I know Dr. Greg's not a big sports guy. And I've come to the conclusion that if you are Catholic and you don't like the Boston Celtics, you are in the wrong.
Look at what's the coach's name?
Coach Joe Mazzulla. But hold on, we'll get to
Mazzulla praying the rosary before the game, doing his lap. Talk about a lap. He did the victory lap before the game, praying his rosary.
Amazing.
Of course, this is a Catholic Psych topic.
This is a Catholic Psych topic.
This is full integration. This is like a beautiful integration of culture, entertainment, faith. We could definitely open this up.
Great. Well, he's not. I mean, he's like the cherry on top. We'll talk about Coach Mazzulla in a second, but all throughout the roster of this team, like even going back, the whole organization is built on character. They signed, drafted, traded for players of actual virtue and character, and are all about team building and focusing on being a star in your role and contributing to the larger whole. And that's why they won the championship, first of all. Then you go down the roster and you see all these quotes after they won, everybody thanking God, prioritizing God, their best player. I loved this quote by him. He said, well, first of all, like all glory to God in his post-game interview after winning the title, all glory to God, but not because we won.
Praise God. Look at that.
Amen. Look at this nuance, right? A lot of times like athletes will say like, thank God, like because we won. That goes back to that quote. It's like about the Civil War, like both sides were praying to God for a victory. Like just because you pray to God doesn't mean you're going to win something, right? But he's saying he said thank God for putting me in a situation where I can use the talents that he gave me to excel.
Awesome.
This is awesome. That's Jason Tatum, and then Al Horford is another big Christian. All down the list. They all thank God. Jaylen Brown, they're all religious to some extent, which is beautiful. Now, Coach Joe Mazzulla has a history of making his faith very public in post-game conferences. So the first one was a year ago when the royal family from England came to the Boston Garden to watch the game. There was like, I don't know, the Prince, I don't even know their name, Prince Henry and Meghan Markle, one of those combinations of people were courtside watching the game. And in the postgame, they asked Joe Mazzulla, what was it like to have the Holy Fit, or excuse me, to have the, I kind of ruined the joke there, but what was it like to have the royal family watching the game? And he said, who, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph? That's the only royal family I know.
What a diss and an awesome affirmation. That's so good.
Yeah. And so the reporters are just like stunned, like when he does this. And then
I love it.
And then more recently, he made the finals, and the other head coach for the other team was Jason Kidd, who's also African-American. And the news reporters asked him, like, what's it like to be part of the first ever NBA finals where two black coaches are, representing their club when, historically black coaches have had a hard time, in terms of getting positions and coaching positions and have been marginalized, et cetera, et cetera. And it was like basically an implication to like breaking through the ceiling and being a black coach. And he said, I wonder how many of them were Christians.
Nice.
Silence.
Nice.
Silence. And then after he won, he comes out wearing a T-shirt that says, and it's all black with big white letters that says, "But first, let me thank God."
Wow.
Yeah. So he's very, very Catholic. He wears it on his sleeve, and it's just a beautiful thing to see.
I love it. I love it. I think this is so important. I mean, look at we're all about culture. This is our show here. It's like, let's comment on culture, current events, things like that.
Yeah.
So even though I don't personally like sports,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. We can still talk about it. And especially if it's your team. If your team wins, of course we're going to talk about it.
It's my team.
But I was thinking about, I mean, like all the stuff that's happening, we could talk about sports in general with like the Riley Gaines sports angle, and what's the latest? I keep seeing this pop up and I'm not even paying attention with the WNBA.
Caitlin Clark, yeah.
Yeah, so what's the backstory there? Because I just saw a latest headline, like a white Catholic girl in basketball, and like I didn't even realize that she was Catholic.
Yeah.
I don't know if that has any part of it, but what's going on there?
The drama with Caitlin Clark is that the WNBA has not historically been popular. And she has suddenly come on the scene, and she's an amazing three-point shooter, like a Steph Curry, equivalent to Steph Curry in the NBA. And she shoots from like 30 feet. And she's
of course,
just
if
like,
you make any UConn women's basketball references, then I'm gonna know about those.
She didn't play for UConn though.
No, I'm just saying, just to put in there, I don't like sports in general, and women's basketball is probably even less on the totem pole.
Yes,
but if you bring up anything with my grandparents in East Hartford, Connecticut,
yeah,
would argue that UConn women's basketball from like the 2000s could have beaten like half the NBA teams.
Well, they're wrong.
No, I know, but that's just Connecticut UConn pride for you.
Yes, it's true. Yeah, because we don't have any professional teams since the poor Hartford Whalers left. But
they were. I mean, Gino Auriemma was phenomenal. I mean,
he still is. He just re-signed for another 5 years.
That I mean, those teams. But are they still as good?
Yes.
Oh, they are really.
Yeah, they're absolutely dominant in women's college basketball. Yeah. What was Caitlin Clark. So Caitlin Clark has like revolutionized, she revolutionized college women's basketball, and then she's now made it to the WNBA, and the popularity for the sport has risen quite a bit. It's like the highest viewership it's ever seen, and everyone's on the surface level, it's being attributed to her amazing play. But that is being swept up into the culture as the only reason why she is popularizing the sport is because she's white and heterosexual. And like the argument is like,
I see.
Lesbian athletes, which there's a high percentage of lesbian female basketball players in the WNBA, and it's predominantly African-American, Black. Like they've been doing amazing things all the way, like since the beginning, the inception of the league. And now the only reason people are paying attention is because it's like this pretty little heterosexual white girl. So, and then she's being terribly mistreated on the court. And that's somewhat being normalized from one angle, saying, all these big hype athletes that come into a new sport like LeBron James or Michael Jordan were sort of hazed when they first came in by the other players. But it's like kind of being used as an excuse to like follow the absolute crap out of her, like smack her in the head, hit her in the back for no reason, call her a white. There's a commentator that called her a white bitch. Like it's become like this woke issue.
I mean, that's insane. How is this? Yeah. We're so messed up. Our culture is so screwed up.
I know. Yeah, it's sad. And she's like taking it all in stride. She has a lot of character. I actually never heard that she was Catholic until you just mentioned that, but she's taking it in stride and just like downplaying it, be like, it's part of the game. Like this, I just accept that these are hard falls and these are basketball plays. And I wouldn't want like any of this to detract from the greatness of all the other players in the league and what's come before me. She's like taking the high road, and she keeps just getting smashed. And she's been really a model of virtue.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh man, we got to pray for her. That's awesome.
Yeah, she's great.
Was she not invited to be on the Olympic team or something?
She was not invited to be on the Olympic team. I mean, she's a rookie. She's been doing this for like 2 months. So in a certain sense, it makes sense. But on the other hand, it's like she's the hottest thing since ever, really, in the WNBA. Wow. So,
interesting.
So it's controversial that she wasn't invited to the Olympics also, and they're saying it's politics and all this other stuff. So, Caitlin.
All right. Well,
anyway, Celtics are the world champions.
Celtics. Go Celtics.
Banner 18. They now have the most championships out of any organization, which they did anyway. The Lakers claim that they have 17, but actually the Minneapolis Lakers had like 5 or 6 titles. So they're claiming titles that weren't theirs, even though the Lakers moved. They moved to LA from Minneapolis. We call them the Los Angeles Fakers. That's what they are. All you people out there in California.
Any Lakers fans, please send us your comments if you'd like to contribute to this conversation.
All right. So, I took my victory lap there, and then I thought I'd toss you a softball here. I know how much you love social media.
What are we going to talk about now?
U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy called on Congress yesterday to require warning labels on social media platforms, like those for tobacco and alcohol, to highlight the potential harm to children's mental health. In a New York Times op-ed, Murthy identified social media as a major factor in the mental health crisis among adolescents, citing a 2019 study that linked over 3 hours of daily social media to a doubled risk of anxiety and depression. Teens average roughly 4.8 hours per day. So over 3, and it doubles your risk of anxiety and depression for adolescents anyway.
Yeah, this hour with us on the Catholic Psych Show does not count.
YouTube's a little different, isn't it? I mean, it's like you're just watching a TV show. It's not scrolling on your phone.
It could very, very, very likely be part of what causes mental distress.
It
YouTube
could be, but
nobody's sitting down watching YouTube like television.
No, they are.
People are scrolling. It's all the algorithms are built on the fact that the majority of people are going to be run by their very short attention spans the same way as if they're scrolling on Instagram.
No, but there are different algorithms. There are algorithms within YouTube. There are ones for shorts, YouTube shorts, that do play into that same type of neurology as Reels do on Instagram. And it's about scrolling culture. But a lot of YouTube is about long form video, and that's becoming more and more popular, like this show. So there's pockets of YouTube. I won't even say pockets. There's dimensions of YouTube. Sections of YouTube.
There's the same dimensions are different on. I mean, we got people watching on Instagram right now, so
yeah,
same thing. When I said Catholic Psych Show, it's not just on YouTube.
Sure.
We're spanning across all the social medias, and the fact is that all the social medias are just as likely susceptible to the addictive parts of the brains that are causing the anxiety and depression in people.
I mean, over 3 hours a day is a lot.
Yeah.
So it's saying if you're over 3 hours, it's a problem. If you're putting like 3 hours into like scrolling,
that's still a problem.
Yes, 2.5 hours.
Look, baby steps here, but I think we're moving in baby steps.
2 hours and 45 minutes of scrolling on your phone is fine. 3 hours, it's an issue.
Whoa, we're getting crossing the line there, getting crazy.
Yeah, so the Surgeon General argues that previous research shows warning labels can raise awareness and influence parental behavior. It follows his op-ed piece in May, recommending limits on social media use, such as phone-free schools and restricting access until after middle school for your kids. This requires legislation from Congress in order to change. More than a dozen states have passed laws limiting adolescent social media use, but several have been blocked in court, arguing that this responsibility should fall on parents and not the government or tech companies. Where do you fall on this? I don't think this is like a principle of subsidiarity. I think I smoked a lot of cigarettes in my youth. I smoked a lot of cigarettes. I mean, I smoked a pack a day for like 7 years. And as a child, you still think you're sort of invincible in your adolescent years. And it's like, maybe I'll die of cigarettes, maybe I won't. I'll put this problem off until later. You know, there's stories of someone that smoked into their 90s, you know, and you like fool yourself into thinking that you're invincible. But when I started seeing those labels that are very clear about what smoking is going to do to you, it definitely woke me up. It was like a splash of water in my face in terms of the dangers of cigarette smoking. I think this is a good idea.
Warning labels, sure. I mean, I feel like this is just, you know, what's the analogy? I don't know. Is there a good saying for like, you know, putting out a fire while the whole house is burning down? It's like, you know, it's like you can't, like, this is such a minuscule dimension to the problem.
What, putting on a warning label, you think, in terms of helping things?
Yeah, I mean, the whole culture. And then this isn't, I do agree. I tend to be much more libertarian and not wanting government kind of enforcing things and stepping in. Like I really don't like big government at all. And because I mean, even if they did, I mean, look, how old were you when you were smoking cigarettes?
The first cigarette I had was like age 12.
Wow.
Yeah. But I smoked, I mean, really smoked. I mean, that was just like kind of messing around a little bit. And I had some over the years, but smoked, I was probably ages like 16 to 23.
Yeah, so I mean, in your delinquency, you couldn't, the laws about, having to be 18 to buy cigarettes didn't matter to you. Like, the laws don't matter. And
you can still get them.
And this gets into the whole gun thing and like all this other stuff. You know, it's like all these issues, all these actual problems with guns are people who are breaking the law. It's not like the law changes anything. So, okay, so that's an extreme statement. Of course, the law affects things. It does matter.
Things. Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't completely protect, but it does. Place.
I think like, it's funny. My stepmom is from Europe, and we have cousins in Italy and in different parts of Europe, and we have experienced a lot of European mentality around drinking, and they have a lot looser, less restrictive ideas about drinking.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to that. And of course there's going to be alcoholism and there are people that abuse it but it does, when you remove the pressure from the top,
the stigma
and the stigma, but it also just, it kind of highlights the importance of the family to talk about things more, to sort of come up with their way of handling situations, to set standards.
Yeah.
And so there is a subsidiarity piece to it. And when the government steps in and starts running everything, it's like, well, they, whatever the rules are, they set the rules and we don't have to worry about it. So I think when it comes to social media, though, it's such a deeper issue, and it's embedded. It's just embedded. It's in our school systems, the whole shift over to using tablets in the schools, and I mean, just on and on and on. We're so far beyond. Like, the entire marketing system is built into social media now.
Yeah, but I don't know that kids believe that social media is problematic. The same way, like, I didn't know that drinking was problematic when I was underage, or smoking cigarettes, or whatever kind of riffraff I was hanging around with and trouble I was getting into.
You don't think that people are telling them it's problematic? You don't think teachers, parents, everybody is like...
Yeah, but it's easy to...
Every family I've ever talked to is like, how do I get my kids off the phone? It's a fight in our house every week.
But from the perspective of an adolescent, it's easy to dismiss a particular adult, an individual adult, your parents, a teacher whom, puts restrictions and makes your life on your life and makes your life difficult and doesn't let you do what you want to do anyway.
So you're saying if the warning wasn't on the cigarette box and it was just your mom telling you smoking is bad.
Subjectively, it was different for me,
and you would say that, well, it changes the argument. If you see it on the box, you're like, oh, maybe mom's right?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, at that time, yeah. I mean, it was like someone official. It was like the Surgeon General, the government, doctors are saying this is bad. It just felt different when you're seeing it right there when you're about to like pull a cigarette out of the box.
Yeah, I
I
don't
think
know. I wonder how jaded the youth are because I don't believe a single thing I see the government putting their their opinion on.
you don't see what?
I don't believe a single thing I see the government putting their opinion on. You
Really?
know,
Not a single thing?
no. What now? You see behind the curtain and you're like, what is the? It's so ridiculous. Like we're in a post Fauci world now, a
Yeah.
post COVID world.
Yeah, anyway, this article says that there is evidence that putting these research shows that warning labels can raise awareness and influence parental behavior. So maybe it's not even just about the kids, it's actually helping parents. It's educating parents on the dangers of social media. I still think it's very easy to stick your kid in front of screens for as a babysitter. And so
Yeah, I mean, I think who said it earlier? Catholic Singles newsletter account follows us on Instagram had a comment to turn on Apple screen time to monitor the amount of time that you're using, and then you can even set it to shut down an app after a set time.
yeah.
Even if you're just monitoring, you don't even have to restrict it so that it shuts it down, or it'll give you a warning and it notifies you like, oh, you hit your limit for the week or for the day.
Yeah.
You know, this is where if you're listening right now and you don't do this, you are now choosing to live in ignorance. You're choosing to live in an unhealthy manner by not turning on your screen time monitor. Because if you turn on screen time monitor and you track the amount of time you spend, then you'll know how it's affecting your life or not.
Yes. I agree. I also don't think that people know how much is too much and like what is the acceptable level, right? And I think there's a lot of subjectivity in that. So before I saw, like, I read this article, to hear that the studies show that more than 3 hours doubles your anxiety and depression. Like, I didn't know anything about the value. Like, I would assume that to be true, but I think if like the first time I ever started noticing hours on my phone that I was like using my phone, it was like you were on your phone 6 hours this week or 7 hours this week or something like that. And I was like, I don't know what that means. I don't, is that a lot? Is that a little? Like, I think if a label says more than 3 hours per day doubles your risk for depression or anxiety, I think putting that information out there might be really helpful for people to ground them, anchor them in terms of what's too much. Not that, I mean, I still think that's too much, but at least having something out there, right?
I mean, I think, well, yeah, three. It's interesting. 3 hours a day, and then the doubling of anxiety and depression. It's like, okay, well, do you want to know how much will increase at all anxiety and depression? Like, let's say not double. What if 1 hour a day it has the effect of increasing anxiety in your life and depression or
Right.
depression? Like that's probably worth knowing.
Yeah.
And so it's true that we have these these indicators, but I still go back to the primary point, which is I think people would be shocked if they saw 7 hours of my week I was on social media. Like if you see it, when you actually have the human experience of the feedback of seeing the number,
Yeah.
it's probably going to be far more than you thought.
Yeah. Isn't that in the same spirit of putting warning labels on social media though? Like the feedback from the screen time, it's the same spirit, same thing. It's making people aware of how much time they're engaging with it and what the dangers are. That's why I think this is a good idea.
But participating in it is different. Like having the warning label is different. It's like it's like your personal effect, the personal effect. It's a different kind of warning. It's like you could have the warning label on the box of cigarettes, or you could be shown a picture of your lungs.
Mm.
You know those pictures? They'd be like, here's the amount of tar in the smoker's
Yeah, and
lung
they
or
were all
whatever.
black.
Yeah, they're all black
nasty.
and nasty.
Yeah.
Okay, but if you show me my lungs, and it's like, that's what's happening in your lungs right now, I'm like, oh man, I'm not touching another cigarette for the rest of my life. Versus just a warning on the box, like this is known to cause problems. It's like, okay, so when you have the number on your own screen time app, it's like, this is what I'm doing with my life. Like this amount of time in my week was spent on social media, and what did I gain? How much of a better person am I? Like, again, I've used this before. I think even here we talked about it with like Catholic mindfulness. People, it's like, or prayer. It's like, take time every day to pray. How much time did you spend in prayer today? Intentional, set aside time. You have a book, liturgy of the hours, a novena. You sit down with your rosary beads. Can you take 20 minutes a day? Oh, I just feel like I'm so busy. I don't really have time. You don't remember it? Okay, set the alarm on your phone. Set a time for it. Okay. Versus, I spent 7 hours this week on social media. I couldn't spend 20 minutes a day in prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, now we know why we're not growing in holiness. Like, now we
Sure.
know why we're not progressing in the spiritual life.
Yes.
Like, those are, or mindfulness practices, self-care practices. Now we know why we have more anxiety, not less. Like, we need knowledge.
Yeah, for sure. So I just going back though, are you against the warning labels? I'm a little confused. You
I
don't.
just don't think they're effective. I couldn't really care less, actually. Put a label on it or not, like, to me it doesn't matter. What needs to happen is like much deeper, widespread education, and like, why is
Yeah.
this so bad? How is
I
this
think
affecting people's life? People need to have motivation to take personal ownership over this.
sure.
And I think this is a distraction. It's just another dumb thing to be distracted by. Like, should there be a warning label? Like,
I don't know.
who cares? It doesn't actually matter.
I'm more bullish. No, I'm more bullish than you are on this. I think that if something is if it's at like a federal level of it's like it's reaching, like it's still like people's opinions that are swirling around until like the government takes a stance and says officially it adds authority to the idea that social media is bad for you. Like I don't think that people all like believe that. I, I think when
Maybe.
I think when the government is coming out and saying all social media now, all of it, we're requiring that there's a warning label on it. I think that
I mean,
decreases authority.
somebody said earlier, who was it? Veronica Kung, I think. We have a couple people here commenting on YouTube.
Yeah.
Um, somebody said that, oh no, it was Chantel Garcia. People are not telling him it's problematic because most of the adults in their life don't think it's problematic.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy to me. In fact, I was actually on X, Twitter, whatever, and saw Jonathan Haidt had his thread. He wrote a book, a really important book about the anxious generation, and he blows the lid off of social media use. And this is before people are comparing the newer book, Bad Therapy. A lot of people said that Haidt's book is better. His book is great. I've not read the whole thing yet, but it is great. And he was talking about like saying that we need warning labels is saying that we need research to show us that having a parachute when you're falling out of a plane is a good idea. It's
Funny
like
analogy.
we don't need, like, there's just a basic level of common sense that tells us things are good or not good. And we're in such a crazy world where it's like, well, what does the research say? Falling out of airplanes. Well, maybe it's better to have a parachute. Well, what does the research say? Let's get empirical validation on this. Where are the peer-reviewed studies? Like, this is like psychology run amok. Even in our own field, even with our own colleagues, we have these conversations.
You're saying common sense should be enough here.
Common sense should be enough. And at the end of the day, having, even if it's common sense built on principles of human flourishing, okay, do we need the government to tell this to us? Okay, fine. I mean, maybe they should put the label on there, but.
Yeah, I'm reminded of Chesterton. Didn't Chesterton say common sense isn't all that common?
Exactly. That's true.
Yeah.
Chantal, great point. She says, I'd venture to guess that the majority of families you speak to for 10 years until this past year. Wait. Oh, multiple comments here coming in. Okay. That most of those people that were wanting to get their children off of technology are probably actually Christian families. So yes, that's absolutely true. So amongst the Christian, that's our audience for the most part. So you're right. I don't know the public school milieu, if that environment, people are not as clear on this. So maybe it's true. Thanks for that perspective.
Yeah. A lot of thoughts here. People chiming in.
Yeah. So, all right. What else?
Aliens.
What about aliens? What about these?
What about them? They're real, according to 3 Harvard professors.
I thought when you read the headline, I thought you were saying that the aliens among us are at Harvard, like the
No,
the professors are the aliens.
no. But the Harvard professors are essentially saying that there are aliens among us and we don't know it. It's a new study, new theory. Um, Aliens might be living among us, Harvard academics are suggesting, perhaps residing in advanced technological civilization deep underground, or maybe in a base inside the moon or among us. That's right. A new paper by researchers at Harvard University's, you'll love the name of this, Human Flourishing Program.
Yeah,
That's the name.
Harvard's got that program. They put out a bunch of stuff.
Yes. Posits that unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAPs, more commonly referred to as UFOs, and extraterrestrial beings could be living underground, on the moon, or even walking among humans. Yes, the authors are fully aware that the report will raise eyebrows and likely be met with skepticism by the scientific community, but encourage consideration in the spirit of epistemic humility and openness. So the new study entitled, now this is a difficult word for me, the crypto-terrestrial hypothesis, a case for scientific openness to a concealed earthly explanation for unidentified anomalous phenomena, provides 4 possible explanations for the ongoing concern regarding UAPs. So, here are the 4. They came to Earth, crypto-terrestrials came to Earth from a different time period or planet and concealed themselves in stealth. I mean, this may explain octopi. Have you heard that that there's a theory out there that aliens like came to Earth via meteors? It's why they're so crazy in terms of like camouflage and the way they can change their
Dr.
body.
Bryan, I have to tell you something. The more you
Great.
talk, the less I am certain of running a show like this anymore.
Listen, form of it. Listen, these are Harvard. These are Harvard scholars.
The headline
should
simply be, "Our children are doomed. Our educational system has gone to garbage. What was Ivy League, or Ivy League was the upper echelon of human flourishing and capacity, which is now clear indication that
before you rant, let me give you the 4 possibilities. Let me give you the 4 possibilities. Wait till you hear the last one. A form of intelligent species evolved separately from humans on Earth and are hiding on our planet. The paper suggests there could be ape-like descendants or descendants of unknown intelligent dinosaurs. Okay, so that might be like
just hurting my brain.
Bigfoot or something, right? Okay. Third would be a remnant form of ancient civilization exists on Earth despite being largely destroyed long ago, possibly by a flood or other natural disaster. And this is my favorite of the 4. The possibility of something likened to earthbound angels, creatures that are perhaps of a magical supernatural origin like fairies, elves, or nymphs.
Well, no, that's the closest one to what I think is true.
Fairies, elves, or nymphs, earthbound angels.
No. Go back to the original. What was the first label?
The possibility of something likened to earthbound angels, creatures that are perhaps of...
No, that's it. That's all I need to know. Earthbound angels.
Okay.
They are fallen angels.
Fallen angels.
These are demons.
UFOs are driven by demons. They're
not even real material craft. All these things are just demonic activity.
Mm-hmm.
This is all that we need to, like, we already know that all these things have been revealed already. And it's just dumb, aimless.
What things have been revealed?
But of course, there's a whole world of the supernatural. We know metaphysically, the whole system has already been built. Like, the system has been taught, it's been revealed. We know that there are powers and principalities. We know that there are battles going on that are invisible to us. We know all these things already. And then we see things that are like, oh my gosh, we don't normally see this thing, but it just was in front of us. Like, what might it be? And it's like, well, I mean, we have like 1,000-year history of like people teaching us what it might be. But instead, we're going to just ignore that. And then we're going to come up with like 15 other possible explanations. What might this be? All these other crazy ways we can think about stuff. It's like, how about we just go back to the very simple explanation, which is clear from the core of what's already been revealed.
Yeah, but you don't think that's separate categorically? Like, I mean, when people are talking about UFOs, they're talking about UFOs or UAPs or extraterrestrials or
None of this
like
makes any sense.
no,
It's
but they're
completely
material.
illogical.
They're material. They're material
No,
phenomena. That's what people are referring to.
but there's no evidence of material phenomena. There's
That's
no
debatable.
way in the world that material evidence that's surfaced, that
Mhm.
some elite secret society of people, whether it's political or money, people with power, has access to something that doesn't leak, and then everybody else knows, and more than just some like grainy doctored photo. The fact of the matter is, a human person has intelligence because we are made in the image of God. And to have rational thought requires being made in the image of God. To have
Mhm.
rational thought requires to be modeled on the incarnation, Jesus Christ, who is the only manifestation of the integration of rational thought and a material body. Period.
Yes.
Full stop. There is no other any manifestation of rational thought hylomorphically embedded and integrated with material body that is not human. It's impossible by faith. If you have an alien being, it's not a human, that's a fantasy. If it has a material integration between something in this world material and something of the spiritual order, and if that's a fantasy, that there can exist a rational material being that's not human. So, if we have angels that appear as aliens, that's possible. Demons can appear like anything they want to. Demons could probably manifest themselves with some materiality, maybe. I don't know the full extent of the rules of whether or not spiritual beings can trick humans into experiencing a sensory phenomenon that seems to be material. But what we can say is that there is no possibility of a non-human material rational being.
Can I read something to you?
Okay.
Father, some claim that there are creatures of God on other planets too. Answer.
Wait.
What else?
Where is this coming from?
I'm going to tell you at the end who this comes from.
Okay.
Answer. Do you think they don't exist and that God's omnipotence is limited to this small planet Earth? What else? Do you think that there are no other beings who love the Lord? Another question. Father, I think the Earth is nothing compared to other planets and stars. Answer. Exactly, yes, and we Earthlings are nothing too. The Lord certainly did not limit his glory to this small Earth. On other planets, other beings exist who did not sin and fall as we did. That's Padre Pio.
Don't believe it for a second.
You disagree with Padre Pio?
Yes.
Why? I don't
I
really
just
understand
totally
why.
laid it out. What do you mean why? I give like the
I
fullest explanation of it that I think I've ever even said out loud. What of what I just said is
But
the art. Like, I don't need to know. First of all, the saints they say stuff all the time. There's plenty of examples of saints that say things that are wrong. Like, that's
sure.
not a proof. I want to know,
No.
like, let's think about it rationally. I said it's irrational. It's illogical to think that this is possible. Like, Thomas Aquinas said that Mary was not immaculately conceived. Like, Padre Pio making that statement does not mean anything. That's not an argument.
Sure. But I don't know that illogical is an appropriate term. Like, he has a position that's tenable.
I just laid out a logical syllogism of what exactly I'm saying. So, if Christ is the full
Mhm.
manifestation of reason, of the spiritual dimensions of a person integrated with the material dimensions of a person,
Yes.
Christ is, and the whole idea of the incarnation is that God entered into the world
Yes.
to unite us who are rational embodied beings to be able to be in union with God.
Yes.
So if there's some other kind of rational being that's material, that is not meant to be in union with God, Like that, it just doesn't make sense.
But
Like you
who's
can't
to
have.
say that it's not meant to be in union with God? Can there not be another incarnational type of experience on another planet in which other creatures?
In the fullness of union with God, it has to be human, because that's
Why?
Jesus. Because God manifests himself in the form.
For
It's like,
humans,
here's the form of God in the flesh. Here's the
could the
form of the fullness of God.
yes.
If the fullness of God was manifest within the material world he created, it would look like a human. That's the point. It's like, here's the full apex of the
But
fullness
why?
of God, because he showed it to us.
I know, but the word could have manifested differently to a different race, and it would not have
It
been human.
certainly could not.
But I don't. That's where I don't. Track with you.
It's an inner contradiction of God,
Why?
because he already did it. There's one and only Jesus. There's one and only God manifest in the material world. It's Jesus is one. Jesus is the fullness of God.
Yes, and the church
There's
teaches that
no
that only
alter
happened
Christus
once.
that's a different form that's not in the humanity of Jesus.
Why? The church doesn't teach that,
Of
does it?
course it does. This is like the most basic. This is the most basic Christology. Like, Jesus is the fullness of divinity.
I'm thinking of like, did you ever read the Space Trilogy from C.S. Lewis? Where he talked about the word manifested differently on different planets and in different ways, and Christ revealed himself at different times and in different locations to different creatures on different planets. Like C.S. Lewis is big into this. He talks even like the whole Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Like in that fantasy world, Christ was Aslan, right? And so, like, I don't know that everything that we believe as true in terms of Christ fully revealing man to himself, in fully revealing humanity, and the Word making manifest, coming into the material universe, needs to be challenged in any way by that also happening in a different circumstance in a different part of the galaxy or the universe, whatever it may be.
It's fantastical. It's complete fantasy. It's totally impossible.
It may be fantasy. I don't get the impossible part.
Because it's there's only one space and time.
Yeah.
Now, space and time might be different. Like, we have different interpretations, different experiences. Like, certainly within that statement, that could be qualified by saying there's various manifestations, and it's moldable and it's all fit into different things. But the point is like that God entered into space and time that he created.
Yes, but you're saying that could only have happened once. The church teaches that only happened one time.
If there's some kind of like mind exercise, some kind of brain exercise here to try to imagine something that's like absolutely almost impossible to even imagine, it would have to be that an entirely different space and time was created entirely separately. Like, it couldn't overlap our world at all, because any introduction into this space and time of our concept of the material substance of the sort of metaphysical universe it's necessarily, it's like, okay, here's like the perfection of it. Here's like what the apex, the singular point of the sort of climax of the highest peak of this mountaintop. There's only one possible highest. There's only one possible perfect. You can't have multiple instances of perfect, if you really mean that word entirely philosophically. So God in his perfection manifested what God looks like in the material world, and it's Jesus. It's a human person. Any other form that's any different from Jesus would have to be less perfect, and therefore it would be not God. He's already revealed what he looks like in the material world that he created. And then if we work backwards from that, we say, well, actually, that's the image of how we were created as Adam and Eve in the first place. So the model was already printed in
Yeah.
time.
No, I'm tracking with you. I just have never heard. I've never heard Catholic teaching expressed thus. Like I've never heard like Christ are fully revealing man to himself. Like this is like that perfection is revealed, like the perfection that we are called to. But the word that existed outside of space and time is not limited to the way it was manifested in our space and time to us.
Yeah, but Jesus says, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father.
Sure.
Jesus, it's not just that Christ reveals man to himself. Jesus reveals God to man. Jesus is the full revelation of God
Yes.
in his divine infinite perfection.
Yes.
So that's all there is to it. Like when we see Jesus, we see the fullness. Like, and it's a human form in the material world.
But there's
This is who
also a
God
mystery.
is.
Like in a certain sense, abstractly, it's the fullness, but it's a mystery that we eternally like penetrate, right? It's the true word of mysterium. We can't grasp the fullness of God in Christ.
No, of course not. I'm not saying that we know the fullness. I'm saying, though, that we know what is not even as much as we understand it to be. Like, if we see some other creature that's not Christ, we know that this is definitely less than God. Like, I'm not saying we know the fullness of God. Like, even in the Transfiguration, we see that. Like, he could reveal himself more than what he normally revealed. And even in the Transfiguration, he's already showing us, like, yep, there's a lot more to see here. You haven't even begun to see the fullness of this. But what you do see is already on that ladder of that path. Like, it has to be
penetrating that mystery. Yes.
Yes. So, like Beth Carroll just said, Lewis said that if there was human life on another planet, that Jesus is still their savior.
Yes.
So here's the thing: if there's other humans on another planet, human beings, that is conceivable. That is not illogical by definition. Humans, if there are other humans,
yes,
that somehow, like on this planet, there was Adam and Eve, and on another planet, there was another Adam and Eve somewhere else in the cosmos.
I was going to make a joke, but
that's definitely possible. Like that's definitely not illogical, I should say.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, that's imaginable. I don't think it's true, but it's certainly imaginable.
I think what I'm wrestling with is that if we can't understand the fullness of God, and like he revealed himself to us for our own good in its fullness, in a mystery that can be penetrated indefinitely, but like we can't fully grasp the ineffable essence of who God is. How could that not also, like in another planet that's not a human being with Zorks or whatever, could there not be God revealing himself and dimensions of God or who he is? Like as God reveals himself in space and time, as Christ reveals himself to us, could he not reveal himself to the Zorks in the same way?
I mean, it's kind of like I mean, there's an error of pantheism. It's almost as kind of like saying like, well, there's God is like in various forms, and there's different possibilities for like the way that God reveals himself, and
manifestation of the Brahman and all that. You're saying,
yeah, it's like it's very Eastern,
mm-hmm.
and in that not culturally Eastern, but like the sort of Eastern philosophies
religiously Eastern,
that are non-Christian yes. Eastern philosophies. It's more like that. It's like, yeah, there's this like other just sort of like, you know, polyp, this dropout, this like other manifestation that grows out of the divine, and it's in this form here, and it's in that form there, and it's like, no, that's not.
Well, there's no
Jesus says, if you have seen me, you have seen the Father.
Yeah, there's no personhood in those Eastern philosophies. The argument for extraterrestrials is that still the person of God reveals himself in personhood to other persons that are not humans.
That's not possible.
To be a person means to be a human always?
Well, you could be a divine person.
Yes.
But like Jesus is a divine person. But there's no other person. There's divine person and there's human person.
The church teaches there's no other thing besides a divine person and human person.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure on this. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, because I know that in the positive, but in the negative form of that there's not any other. I don't think so. I'm fairly certain. I'm like 98% on that one. But that's personhood is essential to being human.
Yes.
It's a little bit vague. I know when I've
to
learned
be a
this.
human is to be a person, but does to be a person mean to be a human?
No, because
That's
you could be a divine person.
right. So there may
But
be Zork persons.
I don't think that's possible. I don't think that's. Besides, this is not
Spiritual
persons.
persons.
So Kathy says spiritual persons are angels. Kathy. That was the caveat that I don't want to complicate this. It was like, are angels considered persons? I don't know if they are. If they are, they might be the only other example of like full immaterial personality, and then persons in the material would be humans.
They may be the only other example.
Besides that, though, here's the point. This is a deviation from the path we were on. Whether or not they are persons, that doesn't say anything about whether or not they could be intelligent in the image of God. Like, God showed us the only manifestation of the perfection of divinity that is integrated in the material world.
The only manifestation of the perfection of humanity. It's perfect. He's perfect in his divinity.
They're fully integrated. They can't. This is why it's a heresy from like the 3rd century. Christ as human is fully integrated with Christ as God.
Yes.
His humanity is perfect. His divinity is perfect. It's the perfection of divinity. It's the perfection of humanity.
Yes.
Both are in the perfect form. There's no other form of an integration of a spiritual and material being that can be like God and not human.
That's the only thing. I've never heard the church teach that point. I'm with you all the way up until that last
conclusion based
on
that
last sentence
on the divinity and humanity of Christ.
And the church has like expressed and unpacked that logical conclusion before. That
aliens are. I'm making the connection. Here's why aliens could be possible. Is that if aliens are not rational beings and they're other kinds of animals, then that could be possible. They cannot be rational beings. That's the whole difference.
Well, we know. I mean, there's microorganisms on like the International Space Station.
100%.
There's life out there. There's no doubt about it.
So if aliens exist that show up in UFOs, somehow animals are building UFOs without rational thought.
How does that work?
That's why I'm saying it doesn't work. It's impossible. Like, that's not imaginable. That's what I'm saying. That's why it's ridiculous to think that aliens exist. If aliens exist, they would philosophically have to be non-rational animals. I think you're
making very strong arguments, and you're great at making arguments.
No, this is not. Forget the passion, emotion, and my volume of my voice.
I think you're great at making arguments. I just don't like
impossible.
Like I don't think that the church has come out and said that there's no other.
The church doesn't need to come out and say that wearing a parachute is a good idea if you're falling out of a plane. Some things are philosophically and rationally true, even if there's not a church teaching on the issue.
Yeah, and I don't.
Chantal says God made angels to be in union with him, didn't he? And they are not human. That's why Lucifer fell, because the plan was that that humanity would have the deepest, fullest union with God. We have union with God in a way that angels don't. And that's why Lucifer, who is the highest created being, fell out of pride, because he thought, this is at least the story. I wasn't there, but this is like, I can hear Father Benedict Rochelle, in these arguments, he would turn to somebody and say, "Oh, were you there?" I wasn't there, but as the story goes, he saw the plan of God was that the human who is lower than the angel would be in union with God in a fuller way because of the integration of the material and the immaterial, body and
Yes.
spirit in union and through the image of God in Jesus Christ. That's
Sure.
the fullness of perfection in union with God. All I'm saying is it's philosophically irrational that there could be a rational being. We are the only creatures in existence created by God in the
To our
material
knowledge.
world that can have this conversation and talk about things that are either rational or irrational.
To our knowledge.
Oh my gosh.
To our knowledge. Can God not have revealed? Could there not be something on the opposite end of the galaxy, which we're not privy to, which doesn't change a stroke of church teaching?
Why you keep talking about church teaching? It would have to change a stroke of what is objectively rational. This is like, well, maybe goodness and badness exist.
I don't think
to
that it's
some
rational.
people.
Just because you're calling it rational doesn't mean it's like rational necessarily.
You'd have to break down the rational argument. Like, well, how is there? Like, you have to point out where there's a flaw in the logic or the reason in it.
Yes,
So
that's true.
where's the flaw?
Listen, I think you're phenomenal at arguing, and I don't have the clarity of thought to make the argument. But at this moment, but I know that there's someone far brighter than me that can make the argument, and it's something to the effect of all these statements that we have about Christ and in his divinity and how he manifests, how God manifests in this time and space to us, which is for our good, could also have happened elsewhere for the other creatures' goods, and that there are potentially persons that are not human persons, and the Word revealed God perfectly to them also.
I feel like you're not following what I'm saying at all.
No, I am. I feel like it can be expand. Like what you're saying is like could be expanded to include other possibilities.
What's going to be really interesting is to see how many people actually want to listen to us bicker and banter like this. All right, Catechism 327. Stephen Murphy just pointed me to this. I'm going to read it. I haven't pre-read it yet, so I don't know. The profession of faith of the Fourth Lateran Council from 1215 affirms that God, from the beginning of time, made at once out of nothing both orders of creatures, the spiritual and the corporeal, that is, the angelic and earthly, and then the human creature, who, as it were, shares in both orders, being composed of spirit and body.
Great. And then
nothing else.
And then, unbeknownst to us, he created a third creature.
Well, that's not church teaching. You're adding to church teaching.
No, but I'm saying it's not illogical to say that that's possible.
It is absolutely illogical to say that that's
because it's not included in the catechism?
No, because of every rational reason I gave you, understanding the Christology, the fullness of the perfection of God in the human form. The fullness of the perfection of God in the human form is Jesus, a human. And there's no other way to have any manifestation of God and its perfection in the material order.
I think I'm getting tripped up when you say God, the perfection of God. Like God is already perfect outside of
right. And he's like,
Christ.
I'm perfect outside of the material world. And if I'm going to enter into the material world, he's by definition necessarily logically, rationally, philosophically, and there's no other
I guess what I'm saying, it doesn't necessarily.
The only way that God could be in the material order is the way he appeared as Jesus.
Isn't that limiting what he can do?
Yes, it's limiting. God cannot be imperfect. That's limiting God. God is limited by perfection. He cannot be imperfect.
Why can he not also perfectly manifest himself in another context? That's my question.
How can you think of two different manifestations as equally perfect? Everything about Jesus, everything about the human person of Jesus, the human nature, I should say, not the human person. He's a divine person with a human nature. Everything about that nature of Christ incarnate,
yes,
is the perfection.
But it's in space and it's in space and time, though. Like there's different manifestations of God's perfection in Christ in one when he tells one parable, and also when he's dying on the cross. Those are different.
Neither are perfect. A parable is not perfect by definition. A parable
I mean him telling the parable. I'm saying,
but
just
that's
moments in his
point,
life.
Though. It's like
I'm saying
sometimes
moments
God
in his
is
life.
sometimes God is an image of father, sometimes God is an image of mother. Which is it? Like actually neither, because an image is not the thing. The thing is the perfection. An image is a less than perfect thing that points to the perfection. Jesus Christ is the perfection. He is
Yes.
the incarnation of God in the material world. There's no other way to be divine perfection in the material order than because there's only one perfect. It's not
But
like a participation trophy where we can like give out different designations of perfection to like multiple instances. There's one. It's the oneness, the unity of God, and his perfection can only be one form.
I think that's putting limitations on God.
It is putting the limitation of perfection on God. Any other thing that God could be in this world would, if it was, it would be an imperfect version of God. It's not possible.
Why does that have to be true? Can he not manifest perfection in another context?
I think you really have to think about the like you have to really reflect on the definition of perfection.
Mm-hmm.
Like that there's a unity and a oneness in perfection. If it's the pure form of something,
right?
Think
but
about it. If there's a pure form of water, like there's no other manifestations of water that's going to be equally pure if it's not exactly the same as what you just defined as the
there's
pure
water
form
in my
of water.
cup. There's water in my faucet. There's water.
But they're
in
all
different
exactly
places.
the same. That's what I'm saying. If there's pure forms of humanity in other places, on other planets, that's imaginable. That's not illogical. But if you think of an alien with a weird face and like a totally deformed, it's a deformed human.
Well,
if you're telling me that if it's a
deformed to us.
human, it's possible. If it's not human, it's not possible. There's no possibility for a non-human rational being in the material world. It's impossible. That's the end of the show, folks. We're going to have to end it on that. We'll come back to this another day, maybe. Maybe we'll do a podcast, a Being Human podcast on this. I can't wait to see the viewership on this episode.
Is Christ an alien? We got to get the clickbait, though. The content has no bearing on whether or not people are watching. It's how can we pull people in with the thumbnail and the title. That's the most important thing. And then if we have some value once we're talking, people stay. But and we're not telling people that we're going live at 11 anymore. So
well, I'm gonna pray for your heretic for your heretical soul,
and I'm gonna pray for your stubbornness.
Thank you.
And inability to be wrong.
Oh man, if we could get everybody listening to pray for me on that, that'd be great. All right, God bless you guys.